Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Factor number 84, cover dated November 1992, and this is part 2 of the 12-part X-Cutioner song crossover. So cover here by Larry Stroman and inked by Al Milgrom. Larry Stroman departing Marvel Comics for Image and his creator-owned book Tribe. Dynamic cover image here, focused on Strong Guy. He's also hogging the corner box as well. Just a little interesting coloring error here. This is supposed to be Richter in the bottom right hand corner, but he's colored as if he's Warpath. So X-Factor facing off against X-Force, and that is what we're going to see on the inside of the comics. So we start with X-Force in New Mexico. Their ship is somewhat damaged, held together by spit and baling wire, as Siren says, and they're debating what to do next because they've just witnessed on TV at the end of Uncanny X-Men 294 it appears to be Cable shooting Professor X in Central Park. So Cannonball is leader, and he makes the decision that Boom Boom, Rick and Ferrell will come with him to New York, and the rest of them should stay in New Mexico monitoring the news reports. And if they see that this strike team is nailed, it'll be up to you all to save our butts, as he says. Strike team, investigation team. And then we've got our splash page, and so this is Professor X being taken into A&E, having suffered that traumatic chest wound, being shot by Cable. So we've got our creative team here, written by Peter David, penciled by Jae Lee, inked by Al Milgrom, colored by Brad Van Kata, and lettered by Richard Starkings. And the lettering here, a little bit tough actually to make out what the title was up here, squeezed into the top left hand corner, but it's Tough Love is the title of this story. So I like Jae Lee's art in this issue and across the 3 issues of X-Factor's involvement in the crossover. The thing to note about Jae Lee at this time is clearly he's influenced by Bill Sienkiewicz, and he is imitating, in some regards, the stylistic tics of Sienkiewicz's art. You might think in particular of Sienkiewicz's famous run on New Mutants. So that's what I see here in this particular issue and at this time in Jae Lee's art, his particular early style. So there's a bit of drama here. Rahne is very concerned about Professor X and wants to gain admittance to the emergency room, and these orderlies bar her way, but she flips out here, much to Val's consternation, and they have to drag her off, the orderlies, and tell her to get a grip, because it's not publicly known at this point that Professor X is a mutant, so they want to keep that hush. And then we have this moment of meeting between X-Factor and Storm and Bishop, who are also there at the hospital. So Havok here greeting Storm by first name Aurora, she responding by his first name, and of course they were teammates in the pre-Outback era and all the way up to the dissolution era of the X-Men team, maybe last seeing each other around the time of Extinction Agenda. So Alex says he wishes it could have been under better circumstances seeing you, I mean, and she responds, I know what you meant. And of course Alex hasn't met Bishop before, doesn't know who he is, so Storm makes the introduction. And the big question is, what is the Professor's condition? So basically what it all comes down to is it's a waiting game to see what the diagnosis is of Professor X's situation. How bad is that chest wound, and what else might be going on? And there he is, all bandaged up now in his... Oh no, that's not him at all. That is a expatriate called Taylor, who was beaten up in the previous issue. So we've got a bit of continuity here with the previous issue of X Factor. And so we have these expatriate characters here having a bit of a debate with Quicksilver, as it turns out, where this guy here says, "We fled Genosha to escape anti-mutant oppression." And Quicksilver says, "This is the wrong country to come to. Not only is young Taylor here in bed, the victim of mindless anti-mutant hysteria, but all Xavier had to do was show up at a concert for Brotherhood, and he was shot. I was there when Xavier and my father, Magneto, first butted heads over humanity. How nauseating to think Magneto's view seems borne out." And Lorna demurs and says, "Now come on, Pietro, you are not saying Magneto was right. The very thought of Magneto repels me, Lorna, but..." And she says, "No, but it's not humans versus mutants. After all, there have been plenty of norms who have met with violence or death simply because of what they were or what they believed." And the expatriate here says, "Human brutality towards mutants is acceptable because it's equitable." And Lorna's not happy with that, as she says, "Stop twisting it, prodigal. It's not acceptable." "No, it's not. And how much more do we take until we start letting people know that we'll take no more?" So interesting, always that debate in the X books, that theme of prejudice and whether one should tolerate and turn the other cheek, prejudice and bigotry against oneself, or whether one should fight back. That big debate between Silver Age Magneto and Professor X with his dream of tolerance. So downstairs, Guido and his squeeze, Jo Beth, arrive, and there's a bit of comic business there where Havok is angry that it's taken quite some time for Strong Guy to get to the hospital. He had his headset turned off because he was having a romantic couple of hours with Jo Beth, so Valerie and Havok exchange a knowing look there, but Rahne is still quite upset. So now Havok makes a decision as team leader to send Rahne and Strong Guy to Central Park to investigate and see whether maybe Rahne can pick up some clues as to Cable's whereabouts. So let's continue. So they set off, and then we get this little interlude with Archangel, whose wing there has been, one of his wings destroyed by Cable in Uncanny X-Men 294, shooting through the wing. And Archangel here is disgusted that he was counting on Apocalypse's technology to save a life, Professor X's. Well, as he says here, he's not counting on anything besides himself from now on. So first we'll nail Cable, he declares, and after we do, it's going to be you, Apocalypse. You and me, and nothing will save you when that happens, nothing. But a bit of a continuity error here, because as far as everyone's concerned, and Cyclops concerned in particular, Apocalypse was killed in X Factor number 68, and Warren should be well aware of that. So Peter David not getting the continuity notes from the editor on that particular piece of dialogue and speech he's given Warren there. And then we pick up with Guido and Rahne in Central Park, and we have the arrival of X-Force. So this is the first encounter between some of these characters, in particular between X-Force's Feral and Rahne. So we're going to see the two of them squaring off shortly. And what happens is that, of course, X-Force are doing their own investigations, and Guido calls in to Havok that X-Force are there, and he asks them, is Cable with them? But he's not. And Guido says, I haven't spotted Cable. Do we attack if he's there? And Havok responds, under no circumstances do you let yourself be seen. They're dangerous and you're outnumbered. We'll grab a cab over or something, get it? Got it. But Rahne, once she sees Cannonball, her old New Mutants friend, leaps away from cover and is ready to join Cannonball or greet him, but she's blocked by Feral and says, I don't like your face, now move it. And then she jumps on Cannonball because she thought he was dead. That was a boast that Sauron made in earlier issues of X Factor. So she was misinformed, fake news from Sauron. So Cannonball is alive, and there's a little bit of a mini New Mutants reunion here. So we've got Cannonball, Boom Boom, and also Richter. And these two haven't seen each other since Extinction Agenda. So Rahne kissing Richter because they had a little bit of a romantic involvement. But she's gone a bit bestial in recent issues of X Factor, and she bites Richter's lip. So kind of painfully rendered there by Jae Lee, and she apologizes that she got too worked up. And so her old teammates are pretty surprised at the change in her character. As Boom Boom says, Rahne getting worked up, what's next? Mother Teresa working at a strip joint. So Rahne says she's going to try and pick up Cable's scent so that they can get out of there. But Guido, who doesn't have any personal connection with the members of X-Force, says, only place you're getting, kids, is up against the ship. Spread him, I'm a government rep, and you bozos are wanted big time. So Shatterstar is not up for doing that. So we're going to see these two butt heads. And this is an interesting little kind of stylistic tick of Jae Lee's at the time, where he draws the teeth and with the gums and lips silhouetted out. So it kind of makes for this very vicious, brutal looking grimace on some of the characters sometimes. And we see it again here on Guido, Strong Guy, in this particular panel. But again, I like it. I like the stylistic effect. And Cannonball makes an offer to Rahne to leave X Factor and to join them instead if they're kicked loose later. So he'll surrender on condition that Rahne agreed to join them later, and she responds she can't do it. We've been through this, and Cannonball says, right, I know, Alex. What about Alex? She's hung up on him. And this goes back to Extinction Agenda and the mutate process that Rahne underwent, and how she was kind of keyed to obey Alex when he was a Genoshan magistrate. So Peter David continuing exploring the aftermath and consequences of that process that was almost fully completed on Rahne. And it's interesting because, of course, it disappoints her former team members. And what happens is that Feral basically says she's not picking up Cable's scent. So her suggestion to Cannonball is that they get out of there. And Strong Guy demurs. He grabs Feral by the tail. Kind of a little bit of a comic cartooning there. Feral's not pleased by that. Scratches him in the face. And Shatterstar goes in with his sword and takes a chunk out of Guido's chest there. So now we're going to have our X Factor versus X-Force fight, all down to misunderstandings and misinterpretations. So we see some brutal cat versus dog fight here in these panels. And Cannonball and Boom Boom shocked by it, biting her lower lip there. And here we have Shatterstar about to stab Guido right through the chest with one of his swords. But it disappears. So what's happened? Well, we have the arrival of the cavalry in the form of Quicksilver, who has grabbed Shatterstar's sword. And so the two of them face off against each other in the rest of the issue. And the brutal fight between Feral and Rahne continues. Feral biting Rahne on the forearm, then Rahne turning even more bestial, even more wolf-like. And look at this, chomping down on Feral on the cheek, So, as I said, like brutal stuff here. And then Cannonball's launching into action to pull Rahne off Feral. And he is blasted out of the air. And we recognize these circular designs. Who could it be? Except Havok, who's arrived with Polaris. And they've arrived on this X-Factor kind of flying car. And here we have Richter recognizing Alex, and that's his competition for Rahne's affections. So he's going to use his gravitational powers to knock the ship out of the sky. And then we have Strong Guy creeping up behind him and knocking him out of the fight. And then we pick up with Quicksilver again. And there's good characterization going on here with Quicksilver in particular. So Shatterstar accuses Quicksilver of cowardice, dodging around instead of facing honorably him in a sword fight. And Quicksilver responds that he's not at all afraid. He dodges around to make you feel as stupid as you look. And Shatterstar responds, I was right, you were without honor. And here we get this interesting bit from Quicksilver. You obnoxious punk, he calls him. The worst thing you could do is merit my full attention. My entire life consists of finding ways to ease the boredom, which you are presently doing. But you are coming dangerously close to crossing the line into the realm of being an annoyance. And we'll see that point developed in an upcoming issue of X-Factor. Number 87, Joe Quesada's first, the psychotherapy issue, where we get an interesting revelation about just the way that Quicksilver sees the world and why it is he's so supercilious and irritable in the way that Peter David has written him over the course of the X-Factor issues to this point. Then we go back to the operating theatre in the hospital, where the surgeon working on Professor X discovers something in the wound that he's not expecting. What the blazes is that, he asks. And then we're back to the fight in Central Park. We've got Boom Boom taking on Polaris here, and then we've got Madrox the Multiple Man turning up, and Boom Boom throwing one of her time bombs at him. And of course, what does that only yield except the multiplication of Jamie as he goes in for the attack against her. Cannonball launching off here, a little DeLuca effect here as he launches off to aid his team members. And here we have the fight concluded, or about to conclude, between Quicksilver and Shatterstar, just before Cannonball knocks Quicksilver out. And this is totally vicious here in this anchor image. Like, we've got Feral biting on Rahne's wrist, even as Rahne is biting down on Feral's throat, it appears. So really, really vicious here. And great line work from Jae Lee, really evoking Bill Sienkiewicz, yes. And that fight is interrupted by Cannonball ordering Feral to come back. And really, Feral was getting the worst of it there. And so we've got X-Force retreating to their ship. And what happens is Alex apparently lets them get away, but tags the ship with one of his blasts in order that the ship leave a smoke trail whereby they can track X-Force, in the hope that they'll lead them back to their hideout, and, as Alex says, and with any luck, their murderous leader. So what happens then is we have the arrival of the X-Men Blue Team. So Psylocke back from England, from visiting her brother, back on the Blue Team, and nice anchor image here of the Blue Team from Jae Lee. And again, an interesting stylistic choice where he is rendering Wolverine's whole face in silhouette, but the teeth here just indicated with the tiniest of straight lines, and it really gives this very bestial, monstrous look even to Wolverine. He looks like definitely somebody you wouldn't want to mess with, the way that Jae Lee is drawing him here. And I do want to say that, you know, sometimes Al Milgrom's inks don't really complement some of the artists he's worked with, some of the modern artists, but it works well. His inking works well and complements Jae Lee's style on this issue and throughout the crossover. So at this point, Wolverine gives Havok the news that Scott and Jean have been abducted by in Uncanny X-Men 294 by Caliban, War, and Famine, the surviving horsemen of Apocalypse, and they deliver Cyclops and Jean with these helmets over their heads, blocking Cyclops's optic blasts and Jean's telepathy and telekinesis, and they deliver them to Cyclops, or not Cyclops, but Apocalypse. And of course, you know, for readers, Apocalypse is supposed to be dead as of X-Factor 68. So who is this? Is it Apocalypse? It seems so in the dark. That's what the Horsemen believe. That's who the Horsemen believe they're working for. But then we see a little transformation occurring in this panel, and it turns out it's Mr. Sinister, who is masquerading as Apocalypse. So as he says here, addressing Scott and Jean, how unfortunate for you that Apocalypse is nowhere remotely in the vicinity. What a sinister turn of events this is, eh? And then we go back to the hospital, and the surgeon saying here that they've stabilized the professor, placed him into some of the newest stasis equipment available, but it doesn't seem to be retarding the spread of his, and he pauses, condition. Frankly, this is out of my league. You people are mutants, and you, Miss Cooper, work with mutants. She's the government liaison. If you have a clue, anything approaching a diagnosis, kindly share it with me. So they go to see the professor in the stasis tube, and Val sees there's something on his chest. What is it? And this character here says he can tell him. It's a technovirus. It transforms living tissue into a mechanical organism. Now, something that's not clear in the art here, or in a narrative caption or a piece of dialogue, is who is this? So I thought it was Madrox, one of his, maybe the original Madrox, and he'd send his dupes out to Central Park. But it turns out it's supposed to be Warren. It's supposed to be Warren Worthington. It's supposed to be Archangel, who has seen the technovirus before. So Val's question is, how do we stop it? That's the problem, Val. He says, we can't. Let's get him to the mansion. Will that help him? The doctor asks. In a way, Archangel says, after all, a man should be allowed to die in his own home. So there we go. What a cliffhanger to end on. The next part of X-Cutioner's song is X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men number 14. So that's what I will be reviewing in due course. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Factor number 44. Sorry, not 44, 84, part 2 of X-Cutioner's song. If you liked the video, please like it in YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.